Mathias Cormann, welcome to the program. Now, Treasury is saying we're looking at a more severe downturn, higher unemployment as well, with the update from Treasury this week. Will you still wind back the rate of JobKeeper and JobSeeker at the end of next month?
Well, that is the current intention. I mean, we do need to transition out of this historically unprecedented crisis-level fiscal support and get the economy into the new normal in an appropriately phased transition. At the moment, our transition is phased to the end of March. I mean, that is from the end of September to the end of March. And based on what we currently know, that is certainly the intention.
But is this step down too soon, given Melbourne's in unprecedented lockdown? That's due to end mid-September, but we don't know whether everything will be opened back up at that point, and yet these payments are going to come down. There's going to be more people unemployed by then than there are right now, and they're going to lose about $300 a fortnight.
Well, what we've demonstrated through this period is that we are prepared to make decisions in the context of an evolving situation based on the information that comes before us. But I mean, right now, as you say, the current JobKeeper arrangement at the $1,500 level continue until the end of September. The lockdown, as it currently stands, finishes sometime before that. So,
how much
I mean, it is going to be important.
Is what I'm getting to. Yeah, how willing are you to be flexible on this?
Well, I just would point to our track record. I mean, we've been flexible in the past when it comes to what has been a rapidly evolving and fluid situation. We've responded to things as they've emerged. But, moving forward, I mean, our intention is to transition the economy and to transition the fiscal policy settings back to the new normal by the end of March. But, of course, I mean, depending on what happens, we don't know what we don't know. And, we can speculate, but, it might well be that things will be better than anticipated. I mean, earlier in March, when we expected the worst, we thought that the JobKeeper program would cost us $130 billion. And by the middle of May to the middle of June, the easing of restrictions in the economy was able to happen faster than anticipated originally, and the cost came down. So, I mean, there will be swings around.
You've got room to move there. I'm just wondering what will drive the decision on this. If the situation is still as bad as it is right now, or not much better, will you look at keeping the rates where they are for JobKeeper and JobSeeker?
Well, look, I'm just not going to speculate. I mean, the policy settings are as they are, but as we've demonstrated in the past, if things change and if the facts change, we'll reassess what may or may not be appropriate at that time.
Can I ask you, a couple of weeks ago, Treasury forecast gross debt would hit $852 billion, or 45% of GDP, by the end of this financial year. Given what's happened this week, what are those forecasts for debt now?
Well, what we provided the updated debt forecast in the July economic and fiscal outlook. That was, of course, a proper economic and fiscal update. The next update to those numbers will be in the budget on the 6th of October. There is always a lot of movement in both directions between budgets and budget updates. Yes, of course, there's been additional decisions to spend more money on JobKeeper, but there's also the situation in relation to the iron ore price. I mean, the iron ore price continues to run above $100 US, which is above the trajectory that we would expect the iron ore price to be on. So, when there's always swings and roundabouts, some things go up, some things go down, and all of that gets reconciled in an orderly fashion in budgets or budget updates, and the next such update is on the 6th of October.
When it comes to debt, though, are there any red lines, any limits as far as how high you're willing to let it go, or will you spend whatever is required?
Well, we'll make sensible decisions, considering all of the information in front of us. I would just point out that our debt position on an international basis continues to be continues to be manageable. We were confirmed even after the July economic and fiscal outlook information came out, including on debt. We were confirmed as a AAA rated economy. So, I mean, we will continue to make the decisions that need to be made, sensible decisions. Of course, we're very mindful of the fiscal context, but we are focused on supporting Australians through this crisis, doing what needs to be done to respond to the health challenge and indeed to the economic and jobs challenge.
About 6 weeks ago, the Prime Minister stood alongside Guy Sebastian at Rooty Hill to announce Showstarter. This is one of the government's programs, $250 million in funding for the arts. Why has none of that money been spent?
Well, the money, a lot of money has been spent into the arts sector. I mean, about $100 million
from this program.
Into the. Well, of course. I mean, any program that involves grant spending. I mean, there are some administrative processes that have to be followed in order to ensure that funding is allocated in the right and appropriate way. But it would be wrong to suggest that no support has gone into the arts sector. I mean, significant amounts of funding have gone into the arts sector, as they have gone into the economy as a whole. But the Minister for the Arts, Paul Fletcher, will ensure that that funding hits the ground as quickly as possible, but having followed all of the proper processes.
According to a departmental official, though, still waiting for ministerial approval, and money might not flow till November. Do you think the PM should have pointed that out at the time?
Well, I understand that the department provided relevant, paperwork towards the end of this past week, and the minister, no doubt, will act very swiftly.
A couple of other things. There have been some promising developments when it comes to vaccines with what's happening overseas, indeed here in Australia as well. The Prime Minister says whoever finds a vaccine should share it with the world. Other countries are entering supply deals with the top pharmaceutical companies. Is that something Australia is going to do, or will we just rely on their goodwill?
No, we're very focused on this, and Greg Hunt has done a lot of work in this space, and indeed the National Cabinet has endorsed the procurement framework for a possible vaccine at the National Cabinet meeting on Friday. Look, there's about more than 160 odd candidates globally. There's about 26 human trials. We're very focused on making sure that Australians get access to any safe and effective vaccine that becomes available through a combination of direct procurement or indeed manufacturing under license here in Australia. So there's a lot of work going on in this space, and as soon as that there is a proven safe and effective vaccine available, we will do everything we can to ensure that Australians get access to it.
Let me ask you about your home state. Should Western Australia's border be closed or not?
Well, we support, given what's been happening in Victoria and given where the country is at, we support the current state border arrangements, including here in Western Australia.
Okay, but you have been arguing for a while now, and I'll quote you here, that these are unnecessary and avoidable economic harms for no or very little public health upside. Have you changed your view?
Well, we have changed our view as the position has evolved. I mean, I would just point out that the Premier Mark McGowan in March, when Lisa Harvey, as the state leader of the Liberal Party, first suggested state border closures at a time when there were 25 to 35% daily growth there was daily growth in infection rate of about 25 to 35%. Mark McGowan ridiculed the idea, and the Deputy Premier Roger Cook suggested that it couldn't be done because it was unconstitutional. So a few weeks later, they, of course, put in place these state border closures that remain in place today. So I'm not saying that in a way to be critical, I'm just pointing out that this has been an evolving situation and people's assessment has changed. I mean, in an ordinary course of events, of course, all of us would want these state borders to be unnecessary. But given what's been happening, clearly that is an important feature of managing this risk.
The Premier is now saying it might remain shut until mid next year. What do you make of that?
Well, that's not quite what he said. What he said is that he couldn't put a date on when the borders would be able to open again. It might be before the end of this year, it might be by the middle of next year. So he said he can't put a date on it, and that's certainly right. I'm sure that the Premier, like everyone, would want those state borders to be able to come down at the earliest opportunity, but we just don't know.
Can I just turn to the budget preparation? This is going to be your final budget. You're leaving politics before the end of the year. Indeed, this may well be your final appearance on this program too, Minister. Are there any, after 7 budgets, any particular...
I'm happy to be back.
Okay. Are there any particular reforms in your final budget that you'd like to achieve?
Well, look, in this final budget, I will do what I've done in every single budget. I will work as part of a team to make sure we put Australia in the strongest possible economic and fiscal foundation and trajectory for the future. I mean, clearly the challenges right now is how to most appropriately manage the transition out of this unprecedented period of crisis-level fiscal support into a sensible new normal arrangement where businesses around Australia have the best possible opportunity to be successful into the future so they can start hiring more Australians again. And indeed, we will be focusing on the next instalment of our 5-year plan for the strongest possible economic and jobs recovery on the other side of this crisis.
But I'm just wondering if there's any particular...
board, whether that is...
I'm just wondering if there's any particular reform you will champion. You, for many years, championed the company tax cut. You know, we've done plenty of interviews about that over the years. Minister, is that still something you believe in?
Well, I'll tell you what I will champion. I will champion policies to ensure that all Australians today and into the future have the best possible opportunity to get ahead, that more jobs can be created. And I understand that 9 out of 10 jobs across our economy are generated by the private sector. So with my colleagues, I will continue to focus on everything and anything we can do to make it easier for businesses to survive, to be viable, to be profitable, to be
including
successful
a company
into
tax
the future,
cut?
so they can hire more Australians. And that will include a focus on the appropriate tax policy settings. It will include ensuring that we continue to invest in productivity-enhancing infrastructure, deregulation, our free trade agenda to ensure that exporting businesses have the best possible access to markets around the world. Indeed, making sure that businesses have access to affordable energy supplies right across the board.
Okay. But a company tax cut's on that list? A company tax cut on that list?
Well, what is on that list when it comes to tax is to ensure that tax policy settings give businesses the confidence to invest in their future success and their future growth so they can hire more Australians moving forward.
All right. Well, if indeed this is your final appearance on the program, we thank you for all the interviews over the years, particularly those early starts from Perth. Mathias Cormann, thank you.
I've always very much enjoyed it. Thank you very much.